Well, everyone, thank you so much for stopping by and working to have Adrian here at the on the East Coast. Made it around Fiona to still get here to be able to give us a presentation. We've been busy for about a year and a half now, doing some very interesting things in Newfoundland. We were able to acquire a very large and interesting and land package. Adrian with his team sort of recruited some of the right minds from his many years in this business. So it's a pretty impressive track record. You want to touch on it over yourself, and share it up with some pretty exciting stuff in Newfoundland. Give you an overview of where we started and what we've been up to the last year, and what we're looking forward to here in the next year.
Yeah, thanks everybody for coming along today. Now, I get a bit excited about all this stuff, so if I'm speaking too quickly and my Aussie accent is losing you, put your hand up and say, Adrian, slow down a little bit here. This is the town of St. John's, and I was here a couple of days ago. There was a couple of cruise ships sitting in here, and as you might imagine on Thursday, that water was a bit lumpier than what you see right there now. So this doesn't want to work. So this is probably going to take about 20 minutes. And if you have a question on the way through, please don't hesitate to say, hang on, can you clarify that point, or is there some other aspect you want to know about? So as you know, Gold Island Inc. is a private company. And we hope to list in due course, but we have a substantial treasury at the moment. We have more than enough money in the bank, and we have about $5 million in each year. We have more than enough money to conduct a vigorous exploration program next year in 2023. We've done quite a lot of work already, starting in September of last year, and I'm going to take you through that. So our goal is a very simple one. We wish to make a gold discovery, but gold discoveries come in many shapes and sizes, and what we have to do is find something that's demonstrably viable. Because I've had the good fortune of being involved in a couple of companies where a large entity came along and swallowed that company. That put some very nice money in the Fleming piggy bank, as well as all of the other shareholders. And from how I see the game here, that's where we want to be in 3 or 4 years' time. Having made a discovery, clearly holds together well enough, got a good enough grade, the location's not terrible, and then one of the mid-tier, or if it's a larger discovery, one of the big end of town is going to come on. Say, as happened with Underworld Resources with me in 2010, we were at the PDAC, somebody handed me a letter, and the letter said, you have 24 hours to say yes or no, and we're going to take you out at 251 for the share. We went back to Thai in the afternoon after rushing to see our advisors at RBC and said, well, what do we do now? And we managed to haggle a little bit of money to get the price up. So we sold Underworld at a higher price than the stock had ever traded, in about a 30% premium. So we enjoy that kind of conclusion, and that's what we want to do again with this company. So in Newfoundland, we have a package of claims and projects which Shawn Ryan, who I obviously worked with in the Yukon in 2007 through 10, that Shawn put together. Shawn has been working in Newfoundland since 2016. He's staked a huge amount of territory. Yes, deals with a number of companies, but he brought this portfolio to David at the PAT, and so at the peak of the market. And so that my colleagues here from Power One thought it looked like a good idea, and they entered into option agreements with Shawn. Then I got a call from Kathy and Shawn, and they said that we need some help from you, Adrian. I live in New Zealand. On this new project, these projects we have in Newfoundland. And I said, well, I'm already on the board of 3 companies, and I'm not sure that I really want to. Have I got bandwidth? Have I got time to take on another directorship? They said, no, we want you to run the company. I said, oh, okay. Well, let me think about that. So I have never been to Newfoundland. I've lived in Canada on 3 separate occasions since '83. And I'm pretty familiar with the Abitibi and certain other places, but I've never been to Newfoundland, so I really didn't know what the geology was like. So I said, well, hang on. I need to get my head around what's going on in Newfoundland, what's the geology like, is there some opportunity there, which I did. And so, like a big fish, I took the bait. I said to David, you know, I've got a few other things going on. I probably can't allocate more than half my time to this project. And so that's what I'm doing. And so my job is to lead the charge. My job is to help my colleagues at Power One raise more money when we need to do that. But I'm a geologist. I've been doing this for 40 odd years. I've been very lucky to have been involved with discoveries in Papua New Guinea and Suriname in Western Australia and in South America. So I've probably made all the mistakes you can make in the exploration space. And I think I've got a reasonable amount of credibility to lead this team in Newfoundland. We're going to move as quickly as we can to drilling. And so the only thing that really tells you whether you've got something worthwhile is a drill rig. But we have several projects which are greenfields. There's been essentially no work done on them. And then we have one other prospect which has got quite a lot of interesting showings, up to 50 gram per tonne in outcrop. So that's the Burton claims, and I'll speak about that in a minute. I think you probably all are aware that Newfoundland is a pretty nice part of the world to do exploration in. Firstly, it's in Canada. Canada is probably one of the best jurisdictions in the world to do exploration. But in many parts of Newfoundland, particularly where there isn't something sticking out of the ground, there hasn't been any recent systematic gold exploration, and that really is the opportunity. So as I said, I've been in this business for a while, and when you've had a couple of successes, as I've been very fortunate enough to have, either as the team leader or a member of the team, this becomes a very addictive process. I mean, it's a lot of fun, and often you fail, but now and again when you actually hit, and then somebody comes on and buys the company, I mean, that's the penultimate experience, and that's like an adrenaline rush. And so people like me have this addiction, and we need a fix now and again. And so I'm hoping Power One is going to give me the fix that I need before I turn 80. I'm not 80 yet, but I'm getting there. Strategic partners, obviously, Pat and David, who raised close to $9 million back with our initial capital raising. And then the other important strategic partner, of course, is Shawn Ryan's team. Shawn has put together a group of technical people who go out and do geochemical sampling, they do geophysics, they do drilling, and they're led by a guy called Isaac Phage, and they probably are able to do more cost-effective work than pretty well anybody else. They do it quickly, they've got great protocols, they maintain a very high standard of work, and if they do a program for you, you can be pretty sure that it's done well and you can rely on the results, and that's important. The guy who's leading the team in Newfoundland is called Paul Robinson. He's a British geologist. He's a pommy, as we Aussies would say, but he's had quite a bit of experience in the exploration space, 20 odd years. And so he's doing a great job leading the charge over there. We have a small team at the moment, just 4 geologists, and then some other people that help us with muscle, etc., etc. Obviously, like all other exploration companies, you know, we've got all the latest gadgets, tablets, and PXRFs and all this kind of stuff. And because Shawn globally put so many samples through Bureau Veritas, a big laboratory in Vancouver, we get preferential treatment. So consistently, we're getting our geochemical results back in 4 to 6 weeks. And I know lots of other companies in Canada who are waiting 3 months for their assays. So that's a significant plus. So Shawn, as you know, myself, there's Paul Robinson over there, and the other suspects, some of whom are in this room, are shown on this slide. John Wenger is a colleague of mine, works for for Canaccord Canterra in Vancouver, and he is one of the other directors. You can see the other directors there, Paul, Jerry, etc., etc. And the other advisor to us is a guy called Ross Sherlock. Ross is a very highly regarded Canadian geologist. He's currently a professor at Laurentian University in Sudbury. He's worked for the Canadian Geological Survey, worked for Anglo, worked for Kinross, worked for junior companies. And I was hoping that we'd have Shawn on our trip this last week, because we spent 6 weeks in the field in Newfoundland. But Shawn has priorities. Shooting moose is obviously more important than wandering around the bush with Adrian. I have no problem with that. But we had Ross with us, and Ross is one of these unique geologists. He has seen so much geology. He's seen so many projects around the world that in an hour or two walking around one of our prospects, he will say, well, on the basis of the geology, this is a good spot to look. And then, of course, we pull up the tablet and say, well, Ross, here's the geochemistry. What do you think? He says, wow, well, that nails it, doesn't it? So having somebody like that who is at arm's length, who's hugely experienced with a spectrum of knowledge and skills, come in and work with you for a week, looking at all of your different projects and saying, well, here's what I think the ranking is. This is what you should focus on. You've missed the boat here. You should be doing a lot more sampling on this area is a huge benefit to us, because often you find yourself in a situation where you can't see forest or trees because you're so embedded in what you're doing that the blinkers come on. So quickly on corporate, 62 million shares out. That's about how much cash we've got at the moment. We'll finish up the year with about around 5. As I said, that's more than enough money to allow us to do a significant amount of work in 2023. The insiders and strategic investors own a significant part of this company, and of course that will go down once we go public, whenever the market's starting to look a little bit better, and that's the warrants that are outstanding at the moment. And this is what a lot of Newfoundland looks like, not necessarily where we're exploring. And
so you have a combination of hard and flow, or is it all?
I think we had some flow, but I think we've spent all the flow. Yeah. ESG is the current buzzword. You hear it all the time. There's a whole lot of people jumping on the bandwagon saying, well, we can show you what to do with ESG. It's a new name for health, safety, and environment. I'm told you get brownie points if you have this on your website, but notwithstanding me being flippant on this subject, health, safety, and the impact of our work on the environment is very critical. The Newfoundland Ministry of Natural Resources is very quick to give you permits. Within like a month, you can get a drill permit. Within 2 weeks, you can get a permit to do soil sampling. They're very proactive. They're very reactive, but they're pretty fussy about water. So if you've got a creek or a little stream running through your property, you have to take certain precautions like bales of hay and stuff to make sure you're not contaminating that creek. But relative to BLM land in Nevada, for instance, and some other parts of the world, getting permits to do stuff here is pretty quick. And they're very pragmatic. Of course, just like all other exploration companies, we pay very close attention to the health and safety of our team. As one example, nobody should be driving anywhere at night. There are 20 or 30 major car accidents every year in Newfoundland, people driving at night, and all of a sudden this great big brown thing is in front of you, bang, and they weigh up to a ton. So you can be killed running into a moose at night. So that's the big one. And from a social perspective, Newfoundlanders are probably some of the most friendly people you can find. We're using a house that's owned by one of them. one of our other projects where we have to ramp up our exploration activity. We met the other day with a couple of people who've got a cabin, so they'll rent their cabin to us when the moose hunting season finishes. So we've got a base right next to our property to do exploration. So from a social point of view, it's a really nice part of the world to work in. So here's our properties, and you're probably familiar with a lot of these. Valentine Lake there, Keats, which is lab gold, and Keats here with lab gold, and then of course the big gorilla in the room, which is Newfound Gold, who have the challenge of trying to deal with a very high grade system, and they are difficult things to get to the point where you can define a gold deposit. A key control to gold systems in Newfoundland are these major structural breaks, these cracks. So up here where we've got the Burton claims that I'll be talking about in a minute, this major structure, the Bay Vert line, curves around through our properties. At Annie-Upsquatch, we've got this major structure, the Red Indian line. Not very politically correct, but the Red Indian line comes right along the side of that. So that's in a nice structural location. And then our Hampton property also has, and it's not shown on this map, but the Hampton property has another major break down the side there. So each of those is a separate project. The one project where we have gold grades at the surface and where there's been a couple of drill holes is the Burton claims here, and the rest of these are all very early stage projects. And then, of course, Matador, a bunch of Aussies working down in the southwest corner, and they would have got beat up with the hurricane in the last few days. So these are the Burton prospects. There was work undertaken here in 2012, and 13 and 14. So there are three separate occurrences. There's no till here, as there is in most of Newfoundland. These are grab samples that have been collected on the surface. Down here at the Burton prospect, there's a channel sample that runs 2 meters at 56 grams per tonne, which is quite nice. And the only two drill holes that have been drilled here are up on the Jonah showing, and they each ran about 28 meters at 0.7. This is a felsic volcanic sequence. This is a big zone of alteration. And one of the things that we were, I guess, developed during the time in the last week that we were walking around each of these properties, and that's about 2 kilometres from there to there, is that you'll see that their rock sampling has been very close to where there's a showing. So each of these, there is a discovery showing, there's rock outcropping on the surface, there's rusty material. And so the previous rock chip sampling by Bowmore is very localized. And so as we're wandering around, Ross Sherlock was saying, well, listen, there's an outcrop here with rusty material on which is pyrite, there's another one there, these haven't been sampled. So one of the things that he has made a big point about is he wants us to collect 300 samples, 100 samples on each of these over the next couple of months, because clearly the system is potentially bigger than what this previous work has done. These guys had a permit to drill in winter, and so they were late getting started. They had drilled another prospect first. They came and did a hole 9, 10 didn't, they had to re-drill it, so they did 9 and 11. And then, of course, the snow started to melt. They only had a winter drill permit, so they couldn't continue, and they had planned to drill here and here. We need to do more work here, but once we're listed, I would submit to you that this is very likely to be one of a couple of prospects that we're going to prioritise for a drill test, and whether we start off with some small RAB drilling or RC drilling before we go to core is something we haven't decided yet. So lots of outcrop, gold on the surface, high grade in places, although a lot of these samples are lower grade, but quite a bit more work to be done to get this target to the point where we say, okay, we're ready to drill this now. So here's a couple of pictures of outcrop. This, when it was first sampled by the prospector Jason Burton, who lives right next door, who has a business building prefabricated houses, the sample from there went 84 grams per tonne. And then there's a channel sample down a bit further, which is the 2 meters at 56 grams. And this is an outcrop in that general area. You can see the quartz veining coming through. This has got sulfide in. You get this rusty material, which is sulfide breaking down, going rusty like a piece of corrugated iron that rusts. So we started work in 2021. We've done quite a lot more work in 2022. The first pass over all of these properties was what Shawn Ryan loves to do, which is grid geochemical sampling. And in comparing notes with some of the other people working on the island with that approach, which works better in the Yukon than it does here, because in the Yukon you don't have till, and here and in much of Canada you have till. The knowledge that we're gleaning from what other people are doing is that you really need 2 or 3 samples running around 200 ppb gold before you should start to say, well, you know, we better follow this up. So a whole bunch of soil sampling in 21, and then follow-up soil sampling in 22, a bunch of other stuff that we've done, which are pretty standard exploration things, and I won't go into those. So these are 2 of our properties.
Map of the soil samples in terms of the geochem hotspots or anything that compiled, or
yes,
line up all that
with each sample point, and we do lines at 400 meter spacing, and a sample every 25 meters. They sample with an auger down as deep as they can go. That's normally about 1 meter, and then for each sample, they lay out the different bits that they've collected. They take a photograph of that. They've got a standard form on a small handheld device that they have to fill in, like the colour, how much organic material, with the bits of rock in it, so you can tell whether it's a B horizon or a C horizon sample. So these people that work for Shawn, many of them are university students on break. You get a lot of data, and of course, as we were out here at Blizzard and Annie the last few days, we're landing where the lines are and checking, of course, that where those samples are supposed to be, there's a little tag with a barcode tied to a tree with a piece of plastic tape, because you want to make sure that they haven't been sitting at the helipad just filling up bags of stuff. I mean, under Shawn and Isaac, that would never happen, but you need to do that kind of checking just to be sure. So Blizzard is our biggest problem.
Really perspective on the properties. You want to comment on that at all?
Yeah, I will. Yeah. So just to paint the picture of where we are here, Marathon's Valentine Lake, around 4 million ounces. I think they've got their money to start building. It's just here. This is a major structure, the Valentine Lake shear zone. This occurrence was found 20 odd years ago. It's not new. But the Marathon guys have done a great job in drilling the dickens out of this thing, and it's, I think it'll be a profitable gold mine. It's open pit. It's heading for 2 grams per tonne. The metallurgy is straightforward. So you would think that within a couple of years this is pumping out gold bricks, and that's going to be proof of concept in Newfoundland, because this will be the first new gold mine. Anaconda have been here for a while, now renamed Signal, and they are mining already, and there are other small mines, but this is the first new large-scale open-pit gold mine on the island. So we have this property called Blizzard here. We've done a lot of sampling on that. I'll show you some of that in a minute. And this is what we call Annie Upsquatch. We normally refer to it as Annie. And these rocks are the same type of rocks as Signal have up in the northern part of the island. These are mafic intrusive rocks called ophiolites, and they're good hosts for gold mineralization. So there's very little outcrop, if any, on this property. It's all till covered. This is quite hilly. This is a mafic sequence, felsic sequence, and we're getting some quite nice sniffs here. Part of the information that Shawn used to decide where to stake these are these things. And these are lake sediment samples collected by either the Canadian Geological Survey or the Newfoundland Geological Survey. And then there are till samples that are also being collected by government prior to us. And so where you have elevated lake or elevated till samples, that's a good place to go to look. But this sampling is very, very widely spaced. And so you need to go in and do the sort of detailed stuff that we've been doing with Shawn's crew of late. So here's Blizzard. And so you can see the purple dots are better than 20. So there's a lot of smoke up through the northern part of the property here, not much down the southern part. But you know, there's a few here that are interesting. Progressively, access is a little bit challenging because there's very few roads. We've been walking these lines, checking the samples, and where you've got an elevated sample, we would normally dig a pit and look at what was sampled just to confirm that we can rely on those numbers. So that's the kind of data we're developing. So here at Annie, once again, this black rock, if you like, this ophiolitic material. So clearly, there's something interesting going on up in this area. And the other day we landed here with a helicopter. It was blowing like crazy before the hurricane actually. But we walked that line and we did a couple of pits on that. And we can certainly rely on those samples. They have sampled the right material, which is the third horizon down, which is just above where the bits and pieces from the till are. So these are quite widely spread lines, but it's certainly sufficient from a first pass to be able to decide what we want to keep, what we want to hold. So this property consists of 7 separate licenses within this project, and there is an expenditure you have to do each year on each license. But on the basis of this sort of information, we can subject to a little bit more work, some remote sensing stuff. We can say, well, there's nothing here. We can relinquish all those claims, and we have until June of next year, which is the anniversary of when these claims are staked, to drop those. Why do we have to do this process? We've got a very large land package. We have to do enough first pass work or second pass work or third pass work to say, we don't think there's going to be anything here we can relinquish those claims. So it's progressively reducing the ground we've got and focusing on what we think is going to be an area where we may actually be able to deliver a home run. So that's a progressive process that we keep going through.
What percentage of the land package do you say needs to be dropped? Obviously, you've got a target for like run rate in mind in terms of maintenance costs, or where are you at now versus how much?
We're in claim year 2 with these claims. So in claim year 1, you have to spend $200 per claim per year. In year 2, $250, year 3, $300. So on Blizzard, which is our biggest property, our first year obligation was just under $500,000, and that jumps by $50 a claim progressively. So there's a very compelling argument that that southern part of Blizzard doesn't look at all attractive. We're just waiting for a few more results to come in because we've been in the field collecting samples where those higher grade soil samples are. But you'd want to progressively relinquish your area. And so what I have in my head is perhaps if we could relinquish 20 to 30% each year. So this is year 2. This is the first year that we're looking at significant relinquishment. 30% of what we're holding to give up this before the anniversary, which is early next year, would make sense. And then the following year, 30%. You might not keep going at 30 because you'll finish up with nothing left. But it's important to try and say, this isn't going to deliver. We don't have to do any work on that. And if you relinquish a group of claims within the claim year that you haven't fulfilled the expenditure requirement on, you're not required to spend the balance of that money. So it's a bit of a stick and carrot situation, but it's a sensible environment for us to work in. The rules are very clear. We know how it works, and we're pretty happy with what's going on. So here's Hampton. Hampton is west of Gander, in the middle of the island. There's a major fault going up through here, the Cabot Fault Zone, and this is the best geochemistry we've seen so far from the year and a half work that we've been doing. So these purple ones are all better than 20, and there's a 420 in there. This is in contrast to Blizzard, this is an area that's been logged, a clear fell blocks that are sort of 2 by 2 kilometres. There's roads all through this area, very easy to access. We're going to do till sampling, which is a deeper sample, larger quantity. You send it to overburden drilling management. They pull out the gold grains. They identify the shape of the gold grains. So in about 6 days, we can completely cover that whole block with field samples. And from that, they count the number of grains in each sample. Now, if the grains are very delicate, they obviously haven't been carried very far by the glaciation. If they're rounded and tumbled, they've been carried a longer distance. So from the grain morphology, you can tell how close you might be to a source. The ice direction here is that way, so we would expect that there's something maybe down in here. We went to visit the Anaconda signal operations last week, and they have been doing the same kind of soil geochemical sampling that we've been doing for a dozen years. And the pit that they're mining at the moment, the soil geochemistry that they got like this, that led to this discovery, the pit where they're mining now, 800 meters up ice from where they got the first indications. And so when you look at the geology maps of Newfoundland, one of them has the ice direction on. Generally, it's just one direction. Now and again, it's confusing because there's 2 directions and you don't know which is the younger one. But the methodology that we're pursuing here will allow us very quickly to, well, I hope it will allow us very quickly to tell where's the source of this stuff. And then we go to some kind of drilling and we map it and do various other things. But so this property, Hampton and the Burton claims, are the top 2 ranked projects at the moment.
How deep is the till?
On Hampton, it's probably only about 2 or 3 meters. It's not that thick. You got the Timmins and it's 50 meters thick. So we're dealing with relatively shallow, thin tills here.
Is that your own mag survey, or is that a historical mag survey on the?
No, sorry, I should have just mentioned that. It's a good point. So what we think we can see here is there's a major structure, and we think these are splays coming off, subsidiary faults or second order faults. And all of the gold deposits that have been found in Newfoundland to date and in many parts of the world are not on the major crack. They're on the one that's coming off on the secondary structure. So that's kind of nice because we think there are others here. We're going to reapply this with much more detail than drone magnetics. Ground truth. Shawn's exploration group have got. They've developed drones that rather than be battery powered are gas engine powered. They have a much longer duration than the battery powered ones. So we can get mag at 50-meter line spacing rather than 200-meter line spacing, which is what we have now, for $75 a meter. And they can do that very quickly. And irrespective of the weather, you can do it even in winter when there's snow cover. So till sampling and mag are key things to take this forward. Now, I should speed up because I'm chatting too long for you guys today. So we have this. This is the last property I want to show you. This is Hodge and Grand Falls. The Grand Falls Windsor is just here. that was very close to town. We're not quite sure what to make of all this yet because we've got sort of splashes here and there. There's a couple on the boundary. We're going to have to stake that. And some of these results are quite interesting because you've got this, the Valentine Lake shear zone coming through, and there's all these subsidiary fractures. So lower priority, this is probably our third ranked project, but that needs more work. And we need to go in and do more of the Shawn Ryan kind of soil sampling here to tighten this up a little bit. Access is quite good. So, like everybody else in the exploration business, there's a series of steps you go through. So, you know, we're searching, hopefully we find something, we're drilling, you define it, and then somebody comes along and takes you out and that monetizes it, and everybody who's ever bought shares or owned shares is going to make some nice money. So there's nothing new in what I'm showing you here, but I just want to remind you of the sort of steps we go through. You have to do systematic exploration, particularly because we have early stage projects. Got to use the best technology, and technology keeps developing all the time. We recently bought some equipment from a company in Western Australia where you can do your own gold analysis at site. It's like a bottle roll test. It's called Detect Ore, been developed by Australia CSIRO. We bought that equipment for about $10,000. And so if we want to get a gold analysis in 2 or 3 days, we've got the equipment there to do that. And the kit we bought allows us to do about 30 samples a day. And it's very straightforward and simple to use. You take 500 grams of sieved sample, you put it in a bag, you put the solution in, you tumble it around for 24 hours, and then you take your PXRF and you zap the little carbon tape that's in there, and you get an instantaneous gold assay. And the work that's been done shows that that's a very effective technique, and that's a great substitute for having to wait a month before you get your numbers back. As I've been describing, you continually rank your areas. You want to focus on the best one, abandon areas which don't appear to have potential, and always focus on your best areas, your best targets. And then obviously drilling is the next step, and you want to get as much information from various sources that confirm that you've got something you want to put the drill on, because that costs the most money. All that's motherhood, and you know it already. So for the next few months, this is basically just a quick snapshot of what we plan to do. So more soils and till sampling, some drone magnetics, mapping and prospecting, and various other things. And perhaps, but there's no certainty about this, in the winter next year we might decide to do a little bit of drilling on Burton claims. It's cheaper to drill in winter because you can run back and forth with us to do. But don't hold us to that particular activity there. So as I said, we're looking for a zone of gold mineralization where in the fullness of time, in 3 or 4 years, we can say maybe 5 years, be able to publish indicated and inferred resources, and then hope for a corporate transaction, which, if it's good enough, will be inevitable. And then, you know, I've been in this fun business for a long time now, and here are some of the things that I think you need to give yourself a chance of success. Great properties, a team that's done it before, sufficient capital. Thank you to David and Pat and the other guys in this house here. Your exploration has to progress. So each step drives what the next step should be, and that's an iterative activity. Remain focused. You have to do that, but you've got to be open to changing tack. The wind changes, or Ross Sherlock comes on and says, "Listen, you're not doing that. You should be doing so and so." Okay, Ross, we're going to do that tomorrow. Thank you for your time. Questions?
What price point were the previous raises done at, and what valuations?
It's 35 cents the last one. 14 minutes.
How much did you raise that on? 9?
7.7.
And that the idea is to stay private as long as possible.
We're at the moment, there's no rush. We are going to start getting the legwork done though here in the next couple of months. So if there is a window or.
Absolutely. And is there an opportunity? Obviously, this is my first time hearing the story. So, is there an opportunity for smaller raise to get some new money in and other groups, or when would we be able to?
Thinking was probably still is to do one initiative to do a raise on the listing. There's some other institutions that were interested. Yeah, we actually had tremendous interest and probably cut back over 5%. Our intention is to do something. If that's the goal or still up in the air, but if there's interest,
The other comment I would make on that question of yours is that there's a seasonality to Newfoundland. You'll hear people say you can work all year round. Well, you can, but in winter, you can't do geology. It's hard to do soil sampling. The ground does freeze, the lakes do freeze over. So in winter, it makes a lot of sense to do your drill because it's a lot easier to get back and forth to the drill on snow than heavily across the lake or using a boat or something like that. So for the so January through May, I do not believe that we're going to drill this coming year. So our burn rate for those first 5 months is relatively small. The fixed cost salaries and truck rental and the rest of them. In the field program, where you start drilling gold more quickly, that's going in May and goes through till the end of November. So it's that latter part of the year when if you're not drilling, we're earning more money. So when we say at the beginning of January, maybe a touch under 5 million for the first 5 months, we're not doing very much of that. But from May onwards, we're starting to do it more quickly.
We're in the budget from May onwards.
Next year, I'm thinking we probably would maybe spend 3 total. Now, if we commit to a substantial cordial program, that would jump to 3 or 5 or 4. But we've got time, given the seasonality and given where we were at with our projects, to be able to, we're not broke. We don't have our backs to the wall. We've got the comfort of having money to continue to do good work, and then we'd like to keep the market improve. And I do what I'm doing today with you guys and say, this is where we've got to. We've made significant progress with our work in the balance of 2022. This target and this target are more robust, so it's appropriate now and we have eminent justification for saying people should buy shares in this company.
Newfoundland package, we had one more grand target, a lot of very early stage, and the goal was, we're hopeful that there are at least a few of those that are interesting enough to validate the investment exploration work. And we're pretty encouraged by the amount of success that we've seen so far. That's exciting. I think, like Adrian said, depending on the market, depending on the results, sort of being more aggressive or less aggressive. I would say worst case scenario, we're going to work on a budget that's going to last us for 2 years. But depending on what we stand, and we already see a number of targets that look very interesting. More work with that channel sample. So it's a nice mix of already targets, prospective targets, and as we continue, we'll sort of shed these less areas that are less prospective, and that's fine too, because that was always part of the plan. It's really come together, I think, as well as we could have hoped for the property companies of this story.
Absolutely. know we were racing this, up there, guys. But they were big Labrador bulls.
Yeah, no,
There's Shawn's, they love Shawn, like they'll follow him anywhere.
no, they're not sure.
There's a pretty broad array of shareholders from the street. Yeah, who are allowed to buy private, and then there's some that are like, yeah, I would have some now that they can play in this, not have to be on the pay in the market. So, I guess on that point, I know Power One is obviously the best deal that's the US for support, but also our response to our shareholders. Yeah.
They're about three, is that what?
Yeah, 3.5 hours actually.
Erickson Market.
Any other significant names that come to fruition when you go public?
In terms of on the Power One side, sort of there are 4 people guys that have been working with forever, and they're always, they know that there's a role to play. When we're together, we're going to time to go public, whether it's write a bigger check, help all with the work. There's a couple of dealers that are in there as well, so we'll have an audience and guys to help them. Paul actually brought in this. It was nice working with Paul on this because he serves a very complimentary network and brought in strategic people as well, and on the capital side, and on the technical side, of dealers.
Yeah, it's the results always good to have an answer, but that's the interesting involved in the story, right? Yeah, so Adrian was out exciting how we get into the story and an update so you guys can get ready for probably an RPO sometime in the not too distant future. We're probably only on 23.
Yeah, we're starting to work now. So, best case scenario is 90 days, and what it needs to look like.
Shell of some sort or
Yeah.
see or and in Power One, I mean, I think everybody knows you guys are, but you don't have practice.
Yeah, listen, our business, we're a registered dealer, but we're really more of a merchant bank. We look for interesting opportunities to act as a very strategic capital partner. And by strategic, what does that mean? Pat, this is on our way to the meeting. He's sort of founder of Power One and very well known, well regarded on the streets, and bringing a unique network of people who can help technically or advance the property of everyone. We are generalists, but their mining exploration is something we've done since the very, very early days. And we've got great relationships there. We've got great relationships with all the corporates having bought and sold assets for years. And particularly, we have really strong relations with the other institutions of the bank on the street. And we view ourselves as nobody's competitor, right? We're a partner to all these firms. We work with Stifle guys or, Ferris, Canaccord, whoever it is, because we bring, a different set of qualities to the table. Our role, sort of, where we see we can add the most value is helping put these things together very early, work very closely with the management team. We've done it now for so long, we can manage a lot of this sort of back office compliance, accounting stuff for them. So the team, they lead, have their own resources for them, and focus on what it is that they're doing. And field term discoveries. And we've been fortunate that over the years we've been involved with some great teams, some great assets, and we've been pretty high profile success stories, and we learn what makes something successful, you learn what makes other things not successful, and now after 20 years we're able to optimize those probabilities. And what's really great is that we're working with teams that have been successful in the past. They're known entities. Recently, the Continental Gold is a great example. They had already Sussman, we've known for a long time. We helped the gold together. We stuck it out from the very early days. It got exciting, it got dicey, had a great exit. Now we're his partner on this new venture of collective mining, the lithium space. All the Fred, we worked with Lithium America's Public in 2009. We set up for that for 7 or 8 years. That's now New York Stock Exchange listed, and we've been on next project, you'll let me know. That's sort of the cycle that we've seen over and over. Another example was Sino Resources in Namibia. For their part in the very beginning, and part of Horax, that was sold. There's another. So the theme is, we're looking to now be very vested, have a clear focus, deliver a lot of value. Obviously, with Shawn Ryan, for a long time, the white gold, that's sort of really well. We think come the end of the year, we should be north of 2 million ounces plus grand open pit stuff in Canada. That's coming on a lot of radar, so we really deliver there. And also this massive, exciting greenfield exploration portfolio, some great stuff. And that relationship is what led us to Newfoundland with Shawn, sort of curated this portfolio for us. But Adrian, obviously, he has success with Underworld to help us project, and Adrian's kind of leveraged his network to build a really strong network. Kind of a culmination of all this, and this is something that we're pretty excited about, and we're going to really sort of put up the flag of sort of the core model. But that's kind of how the model is evolving, where we want to be for investors also, but where we'll have our very sort of core deals with a lot of time working with people that successful in the past in good jurisdictions.
I think the other thing that I just would mention that David already just spoke to is, I said that our strategic partners were Power One and Groundship Exploration. So this office is a one-stop shop for us because Jerry does accounting, he's got some help, they do compliance, and they help us with spearheading marketing, and Wolfie's a big part of that. And then Alfonso de Capo is an absolute whiz when it comes to stuff on computers and marketing. So that's in quite stark contrast to most of the companies I've previously been involved in, where you had sort of, this accounting firm, that IR firm, these people doing compliance. It's all here. We're kind of almost a family now that, we just pick up the phone like I did on the weekend. Jerry, what about so-and-so? And he picks up straight away.
Yes, and that's the thing. We view ourselves as a partner, in this company, and we're doing it. We're entrepreneurial, right? So this is our baby here, and whatever we got to do to make it have the best chance of success, we're willing to do it. Sort of the egos, or themselves, just roll up their sleeves every day and looking forward.
How do you pick up the valuation in different bull market when you're going public, and we're trying to go and say this is the price that we're going public at when everybody else is going out in the right direction?
Right. So see where things are at that point in time. And we're all very early stage grassroots speculative heavy value anyway. Just look at your comp table, you look at the projects with the success we had involved. We have a great shareholder group, and they sort of involved or supported. So appreciate the progress that we've made so far.
You're really investing in the group and its ability to go and have buyers ready in the market when it goes public, right?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. It's also, we're not going to do some public that's got merit. We didn't work out the structure ahead and do something else. The whole part of that going.
So that Shawn got a different options and companies with these 5 or 6 groups he's dealing with. So
Yeah.
this package particularly versus again everything else that other half of the these things.
Yeah. So I would say that he brought this to us very early on. Sort of have a long-standing relationship with White Gold and stuff we've done prior to White Gold, and he was working with us to put it together as a significant partner. I'll say that the founding partners in this are Shawn, Juan, Eric Scott, and Adrian rounding that out. But that's how I do it. He's got a lot of good properties out there, and that's stuff we're not able to see. But it wasn't like he kind of just came to us sort of at the end of the hype, or we say, Shawn,
Everyone's doing this, we're financing, right? And so, right, you know, I'm hopeful that by being sort of early, having worked with them so closely throughout the process and
criteria that sure numbers of big companies is the same criteria you just pick all the other ones.
I guess that's my question, though, what's generally these ones versus the other ones is kind of, you know what I mean?
I mean, saying what Roger Moss has got from Lab Gold, I mean, that's straight on strike from Newfoundland Gold. I mean, you would be really surprised if they didn't come up with something. But we have properties on structures just like that, so no reason why we should.
the issue is all those properties in one path. But I think this, we were first, you know, we're the first people who won the first people. The top prospects. Kind of comments the other ones get on. But there's a lot of, you know, all of the province real closely. There's work that's been done. That's what. Yeah, we're hopeful that, you know, there's lots of this stuff. Good for everyone.
The other thing I do, as I mentioned, you know, I follow the companies that are active in Newfoundland because there are going to be other companies that are going to be struggling to raise money. And you know, we have eyes and ears open because that may be an opportunity that we want to react to. But, you know, we have a nice amount of money in the treasury. We're very careful about how we spend it. Somebody else had something who was really struggling. We assessed that and thought it was worthwhile. Well, you know, that's a transaction you might want to dispute. We already had a look at what MLK are doing. A guy called Fleming, no relation. And they're at a fairly early stage. They've got a great property there on strike from Stockholm. We've been doing the property, we've signed the CA, we looked at their data, but they are just slightly ahead of where we are. They had done a bunch of sea horizon soil geochemistry. They've done tool sampling. They're getting gold back from Urban Drilling Management in Ottawa, which is how many gold grains you've got in this bag. Here's the shape. You're not close. It's some distance down ice. Who knows where it is? So that didn't meet. It was nice to see. It was great to meet with those guys because their geologists have been working in Newfoundland for 30 years. So you learn stuff every time you talk to other people. But that situation was not an opportunity that I just said today we looked at this, but it's not something we want to pursue. So always out looking for other things. I mean, not denigrating what we have, but you know, it's like shucking oysters. You keep opening the oysters and you get pearls, and many of those pearls aren't any good. And then some other person's got an oyster, which has got a really lovely pearl in, and so one way or the other, you might grab that. And with the track record and the depth of the capacity with this group in Power One, if we saw something that we would like, these guys would get on board and we'd grab it, subject to normal commercial terms.
I think there's going to be a ton of opportunity in the gold space, and a lot of that's because all the flow-through dollars are going to critical right now because we get the extra tax credit, and that's what all these gold companies have relied on in Canada to go and fund them and keep pushing them forward. So when the flow-through dollars dry up and they don't have a vacuum of a group that can raise the more dollars, there's going to be right for the picking properties all over the place.
I'm not saying it's a key part of our strategy, but it is part of what we need to have ears and eyes open for.